everybody. We'll give just a few moments for everybody to be able to come on into our webinar. But welcome, we are excited to answer all of your questions about what even is a Coast Guard license and what can you do with it. My name is Elizabeth Allaby. I'm an admissions counselor at Maine Maritime, and I'm joined by an excellent panel who will be here to answer all of your different questions. So I'm just going to give it a couple moments more, have everybody sign in. I know it can sometimes be tricky right when that moment arrives, even though we're all very used to Zoom at this point, to make sure that you're getting in the right spot at the right time. So once more, my name is Elizabeth, and you are here in our What is a Coast Guard License panel discussion. I'll have all of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But before that, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about our format. You've probably noticed that you don't have a little box on the screen like you might be used to. We're in what's called the webinar format. So we can't see you or hear you necessarily, but we still very much want to hear from you. So please answer ask whatever questions that you have in the chat below, the Q&A below. All of us are going to have our eyes on those pieces. And thank you in advance to those of you who pre-submitted some questions. That way we know sort of where some of your curiosity lies. So we definitely want to hear from you. Type away. If we're lucky, it'll become sort of that amazing chaos of questions answered verbally, questions answered, typed out. So please don't be shy at all to use the chat or the Q&A feature. So Kate, I'll pass it to you if you'd like to introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go down the line.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening, everyone. As Elizabeth said, we are excited that we have so many people here to watch. This is a very important question that we get asked quite often. And so we're excited to kind of dive into the subject matter and hear from those that are pursuing Coast Guard licenses and those that have held or are holding Coast Guard licenses now and have very fulfilling careers because of it. So I'm going to pass it to Captain Macarthur, who is an alumni of Maine Maritime Academy in our transportation department, to introduce himself first and kind of set the stage for the rest of them. Go for it.
Okay, good evening. I'm Captain Gordon Macarthur. I go by Mac. I'm currently the master or the captain of the training ship State of Maine, the flagship for Maine Maritime Academy. I am a Maine Maritime alumnus. I graduated in the year 2000 with a degree in marine transportation operations and an unlimited tonnage third mate's license. So I know a little bit about Coast Guard licensing. I've been through the whole upper portion of the license scheme, so on the deck side, and I can certainly answer all your questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Justin next as our other alumni here who has a kind of a parallel track, but on the other side of things.
Yep. Yeah, my name is Justin Folx. I graduated from Maine Maritime with a degree in marine engineering technology in 2018, and I hold a third assistant engineer license of any rating, unlimited horsepower. And I don't currently ship out, so I'm here to lend a perspective on that.
That's great. Thank you. We're going to show you there's quite a bit you can do with this license, and whether it's out to sea or shoreside, it's because of the license that these opportunities exist. Grady Reardon, I'm going to pass it to you next to introduce who you are, where you're from, what you're studying, and why you're here.
All right, thank you. My name is Grady Reardon. I'm a junior here at Maine Maritime Academy. I'm studying the marine engineering technology major. I'm from Dover, Foxcroft, Maine. Part of the reason why I wanted to come here is I always wanted to see the world and kind of travel and do something with my hands. Back in high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always knew I wanted to do something around the world with my hands. And then I took a tour at Maine Maritime and I was like, this is it. So that's why I'm here.
That's awesome. We love having Grady here. Julia, can you talk about who you are and where you're from and why you're here?
Yeah, my name is Julia Malcolm. I'm a junior here at Maine Maritime. I study marine systems engineering 5-year track, And originally when I was applying here, I decided that I was going to be 4-year, the non-licensed marine systems track. But I actually switched over because so many people were telling me like, well, you know, you get to ship out. And I was like, oh, that is really cool. I do like the ocean and that boat looks really awesome. So, I mean, that's sort of why I came over and I have not regretted my decision. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I'm from Trenton, Maine too. So I'm sort of local.
So both Grady and Julia will be gaining the same license that Justin has, that third assistant engineer's license. And we're going to go into what that is all about here in a second. But to really start off and kick off this program, I'm going to turn it to you, Captain Macarthur, to tell everyone what is the definition of a deck Coast Guard license in kind of the broadest terms. What does this mean? What does this license even mean? Why does somebody need a license to work out at sea? So,
well, licensing is a process that you have to go to, much like a lawyer has to sit for a bar exam, or a doctor has to go before medical boards. If you want to work on a ship that is a commercial ship, you have to test and be qualified and certified to do so. There are several different levels of license. On the deck side, the license is kind of graded by tonnage, and tonnage is not weight. Tonnage is cargo carrying capacity. So it's more a measure of volume than it is of weight. So how much cargo a ship can carry. So I hold an unlimited tonnage license so that I can work on any size vessel, any vessel that has any cargo carrying capacity anywhere in the world, because I also have an oceans endorsement on there. So there are different levels of license based on cargo carrying capacity of the vessel and also where in the world they can navigate. So there are near coastal licenses, and then there are oceans licenses. And then there are some licenses that are very specific to the lakes, the Great Lakes in the US and Canada. So you have, for the limited tonnage licenses, you have 100, 200, 500, and 1,600 ton. Anything over a 1,600 ton license is an unlimited license. So when you graduate from the Marine Transportation Operations program at Maine Maritime, you sit for your exams for a third mate unlimited tonnage license. And that allows you to work as a mate on a ship anywhere in the world, because it's an oceans license, on any size vessel. Now, some vessels are very specialized and require different endorsements, and so there are some other things that you may have to do to work on different vessels just because of they're very specialized. So you need extra qualifications. But for the most part, when you finish the Marine Transportation Operations program here at Maine Maritime, you can work on any size vessel anywhere in the world. When I graduated from Maine Maritime in 2000, I went to work on a gasoline tanker on the west coast of the US. And we were, hauling gasoline from the refinery in Washington State down to the terminal in Long Beach, California, back and forth. And then I started working on drilling vessels for offshore oil exploration. Worked in Brazil, worked in the Gulf of Mexico, Malaysia. So, kind of all over the world. And that's what that license allows you to do. And then you advance your license through a combination of time and testing and evaluation until you get to the upper level licenses. On the deck side, that's a master's license of unlimited tonnage. And on the engineering side, that's chief engineer of unlimited horsepower. So, I've had the master's license since 2009, and been working in this capacity at Maine Maritime as captain of the training ship since March of this year. So.
Thank you. No, that is very helpful. So just kind of a quick recap. What Mac is expressing is that, or Captain Macarthur is expressing, is that when you graduate Maine Maritime Academy, you're coming away with that third mate's license, the ability to work as the third mate on any size vessel. So you will be able to work your way up to being the master, but it comes with time and experience in order to do so. So I'm going to turn it to Justin to express, can you define what a Coast Guard license is on the engineering side? Why you need a specific engineering license aboard these vessels? What makes that license maybe different than that deck side license, that transportation license?
Yep. Yeah. So we're moving a lot of cargo, a lot of mass, and that's not going to move itself. And usually the way ships are propelled is with a really big diesel engine or some combination of diesel and electric. So that's kind of the beating heart of a ship. And again, that's what's doing the heavy lifting, moving the cargo. But this ship is like a small town that's floating around the world. You got usually about 30 people, 30 crew members, and they all need water. There's a sewage treatment plant. There's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. There's power generation. And that third assistant engineer license, or really any of the other ones, it's a certification backed by many qualifications that you can run all these systems and keep them running, keep the ship running, keep everybody happy. And so the most common path at a Maine Maritime is to ship out, but there's a lot of stuff that you can do in addition to that, going shoreside, because you learn a lot of mechanics, you learn how heat moves around, so thermodynamics, a lot of like electronics. So you learn a lot of engineering disciplines. I think it all comes together nicely for this license and for working on a ship, but you can apply it to a lot of other things in life, to your car, your house, and other industries and industrial applications.
No, that is incredible description in terms of the beating heart. Your floating city, your floating power plant, and there needs to be qualified personnel that know what they're doing in order to keep that vessel moving through the water, whether it's a cargo vessel to a cruise ship to a passenger ship. There's a lot that goes into it. Grady, I'm going to pass it to you next to answer the question, why did you want to pursue a Coast Guard license? What was it about the license that you said that's the track I want to go and take my college career to?
So I've always liked working with my hands, and the unlimited tonnage license is something that really intrigued me when I looked more into it after I'd already, made my decision to pursue attending Maine Maritime. I looked into it and saw that, working on all these different systems and, like Justin said, making a ship live as like a small town or a power plant. I saw that opportunity and I really wanted to take it. If you are a person that's passionate about working with your hands and solving problems with other people to achieve a common goal, it really is, this is the place to do it. And I probably wouldn't have gone anywhere else as far as done anything differently with my career choice. It was just something that I really wanted to look into, and then once I saw what it had to offer, I knew this is it. So
yeah, that's amazing. There's a lot of options with this license. Julia, if you can answer the similar question, what was it about the license? What do you hope to do with it upon graduation?
Yeah, so like I said, I originally thought that I was going to do the 4-year marine systems engineering program that's non-licensed. And I really didn't know what the difference between those two were, but I guess what I figured out is it's all what you want to do with your life. Like, I had to ask myself, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to have this exciting career of, traveling the world and seeing and meeting all these new people, really challenging myself every day to keep this moving town, I guess, afloat, and basically the global impact of ships also. But I also was thinking, well, do I want a family? Do I want to get married? Like, what is that going to mean for me? But I guess I learned here that just because you get your license doesn't mean that you have to stay in that path for the rest of your life. So I was really excited because what I want to do is I want to get out there. start working, maybe get my second, maybe my first assistant engineer license, maybe chief. But what I learned on my cadet shipping experience on a tanker was that the more time you spend working up the chain on a ship, the more valuable you are on land. So that US Coast Guard license just gives you more options. So you don't necessarily have to devote your entire life to the shipping industry, but it does allow you to show that you are maybe more employable to somebody who's looking for a well-rounded person. And after spending some time with the non-licensed track MSc 4 years and the licensed track, I can definitely say that we do a lot more hands-on because of that license, those license required classes. I can say that I never turned a wrench. I've never driven a car before I went here. I didn't know anything about engineering whatsoever. It's been a very transformative experience. We do welding, firefighting, soldering, taking apart diesel engines. I've taken a cylinder head off this week of an EMD. So like I said, transformative experience. And for somebody who thought I was just gonna become a design engineer, I think it's really important because you have that hands-on experience of working on a ship. And then if you want to transition off, you know how that ship should be, you know the design characteristics that you want, things like that. So I think, there's a little bit of flexibility when you have that license.
I like that. I'm going to quote you, Julia. I hope that's okay. That, what I liked that you said was if you spend perhaps more time or work your way up that ladder aboard a vessel, it makes you more employable on land. And that's something that I think is really valuable to stress. Yes, you are getting this license to work out at sea, but you can certainly transition to work out or to work on land, seaside as well. But I sort of wanted to follow that thread. And I was thinking maybe if we started with Justin and then moved on to Captain, and we'll sort of flip the question for the students in just a moment. But if you, because especially Justin, what piqued my interest in your answer was you were mentioning some of the different industries, both professional but also personal, you can apply your degree and your Coast Guard license to. And I know you've been out in the field now for a couple of years, so if you could sort of tell us, what have you learned so far? What's opened your eyes to some of the different opportunities?
Yep. Yeah. The main thing I've learned is that there are a lot of opportunities. And like Julia said, it doesn't limit you to sailing. It just adds to a conventional engineering degree would. This kind of endorsement on your resume, on your career, that license shows employers that you have people skills, because you went through the regimented program. It is a pretty rigorous education. And it just shows employers that you can do all this extra stuff in addition to normal engineering classes. So I was urged by a professor while I was in school to work for a consulting company. They're called Strategic Maintenance Solutions. They're based in just outside Portland, Maine. And so they implement what's called the IBM Maximo, which is a maintenance program. So basically what we did was we helped companies, usually pretty large companies with a lot of mechanical assets. So like ships or really big industrial machines. We helped them set up an efficient maintenance program. And I was a field engineer for them. So I got to go to a lot of these customer sites or vessels. My first gig with them was a project for Chevron Shipping. So I was hired by this consulting company because I had this license. Because that way they know that we're a group of, we're a little team with the necessary knowledge to find our way around these vessels, find the important equipment, and make sense of all the information that we collected. And with them, I sailed around South Asia, so spent some time in Korea, Singapore, and got to sail on 7 brand new crude oil tankers out of the shipyard in Korea, which was really cool because you get to watch the crews on there kind of debug the ships because everything new is going to have some issues. That was just a really cool experience. Then I transitioned off of that project to one for Lockheed Martin, the aerospace defense contractor. And they're based in Texas. So I spent quite a bit of time around Dallas, Texas, got to walk up and down the assembly line where they build the F-35 Lightning II. So, I mean, who would have thought degree in marine engineering, I'd end up at a place where they're building fighter jets. You get to watch them fly around, which again, just a really cool experience, learned a lot there. And then transitioned from that job to a wastewater evaporation company where I serve as a field service engineer. So it's largely customer support and then some internal project development. But it's a good combination of just working with my hands, turning wrenches, doing mechanical work, but also working on some network engineering projects, electrical engineering, controls engineering. So learning a lot of languages that I kind of had a base in from Maine Maritime, but didn't get to exercise a whole lot. So again, once you have that foundation from MMA, then you can start to really build on that as you start to discover new things in different industries.
Thank you. All I could think the whole time you were explaining the different projects is that's what you've done only in 3 years. What an amazing variety from, working up on things that go up in the air versus things that go in the water. And that touches on another point. Sometimes I get asked, well, it's marine engineering, can I do something with aeronautical engineering, aerospace? And I always say yes, but I think it can be kind of a hard leap. So thank you for sharing that. And, you got to go and experience Texas as well, I'm sure. So even with that license, even with that degree, it sounds like you're still kind of traveling. Perhaps not on the moving city to go to the place, but.
Yeah, at least not as much.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Captain Mack. And I know it might be a little bit different on the deck side compared to the engine side, but just curious if you could speak to sort of the variety of opportunities that are open to folks who happen to hold that unlimited tonnage third mate's license. It's okay. The old mute button can be hard to find.
I know, I couldn't find it. It's while there are different opportunities, there's also a lot of the same opportunities. You are trained at Maine Maritime and certified to operate and repair very large, very complex machines, basically. On the deck side, you get a lot of exposure to supply chain, port management, but you're also doing very engineering type duties. So the mates, the deck officers, do all the stability calculations for the ship. So they basically have to determine before they leave port if they are in a condition where the ship is not going to turn upside down. So, we do all the calculations that determine if the ship is stable, where the cargo is stored, how to ballast accordingly. So there's a lot of like plant operation type of things that we were doing. So that translates over to shoreside operations type jobs. Also with the supply chain things, I know a lot of people who have graduated Maine Maritime with a deck license that are now in the logistics side of major shipping companies. They're working shoreside, but they are doing ship chartering. They're doing marine vetting. So if a large company wants to basically charter a ship or hire that ship from another company, those people will go on board the ship and make sure the ship is up to the standard that they want to use. So there's a lot of that as well. Port agents, and an agent is somebody who comes on board a ship in the port and handles the logistics for that ship. So if the ship's coming from Europe and comes to the United States, there are things that they're going to need. They're going to need groceries. They're going to need, they're maybe going to need to discharge some of their crew to fly home. They're going to need perhaps financial support so they can pay their crew. All of that stuff is handled by port agents, and a lot of deck officers go that route. I have friends who have graduated from Maine Maritime on the deck side who are police officers. I know people who are in the safety aspect. They found that because safety is a huge concern for us at sea, because there's no fire department to call, there's no police department to call. it's a very industrial type of workplace. So workplace safety and industrial management is a big part of what deck officers do. And I know people who have gone on to be very successful in workplace safety environments. So they basically write the safety rules for a company. They'll go in, they'll do an audit to see if a company needs to improve their overall industrial safety. They'll make recommendations. So all of these things you can do shoreside with your education, but that all comes because you're studying to get this license that gives you the opportunities to use these skills that you've obtained. And you wouldn't get that in another type of program. So, shipping is on the deck side is a lot more common than it is on the engineering side, at least initially. But there are still opportunities shoreside that translate very well. Also, when you get to the management level, chief mate and master on the deck side, you're basically a senior level executive. So I know a lot of people who have gone on to be senior level executives in companies who have sailed up to chief mate and captain, and they're doing very well in a business environment because they're very organized. They are very good at managing people because they have to do it every day. So when they do go ashore, they have the skills that they need to have to work in that sort of a business environment and be very successful because they can organize people, they can motivate people, they have an eye for the big picture and also an eye for the detail because they are the people on the ship that have to have those skills. I spent a lot of time in my career actually working with my hands and, tearing apart pumps and valves, something that you would think would be an engineer's job, but we also get exposed to that too because the cargo systems are usually the responsibility of the deck officers. We might ask for help from the engineers, but for the most part, we're doing it. So there's a lot of crossover there as well. So, people who get the deck license and want to do things on the deck side, like the navigation part of it, like the cargo part of it, also get to do some hands-on stuff too, which is really nice.
I also wanted to add on to that. Maine Maritime does a lot of cross-pollination between deck and engine. And at least on your freshman cruise. So everyone gets hours in the engine room and everybody gets to steer the ship. And I had a similar experience cadet shipping. I cadet shipped as an engineer, but I got plenty of helm time. I was curious and I talked to the mate on watch and they let me have the helm for a little bit. So everyone gets to at least try a bit of everything at Maine Maritime.
Justin, I appreciate you mentioning that because there was a question that was put into the chat and I didn't want to kind of derail this thread, but this is the perfect time to bring this forward. One of the questions was that there are 7 other opportunities in the country to gain the same license. And so we're talking about this license, we're talking about these opportunities, but what stands Maine Maritime Academy apart in terms of the way that we teach our students and what makes a graduate from Maine Maritime Academy with this license different than a graduate from another academy with the same license? And so I'm going to just kind of throw it out to you guys because Grady and Julia, I know you're from Maine, but you've chosen Maine Maritime Academy over these other maritime schools. Justin, you chose Maine Maritime Academy. Captain Mac, you chose Maine Maritime Academy. And you guys have both been working in the industry to see other students with these licenses. So what is it that makes us a little different, let's say? And you had kind of talked about that a little bit with that cross-pollination. So I'm throwing it out. Somebody jump in.
So I just laugh because Maine is known for their trucks and gearheads. One of my best friends that I'm still in touch with, he loves modifying trucks and playing around with them. So that's definitely something you see a lot of at Maine Maritime. I haven't spent a whole lot of time at the other maritime schools, but Maine, you definitely learn practical hands-on things just because of what's around Castine and what a lot of the students grew up doing, four-wheeling or doing a lot of mechanical work on their own vehicles. And one of the biggest things that I liked about Maine Maritime when I visited was that they didn't just point at the ship or point at the dorms and tell you, there it is, do you have any questions? They bring you on the ship, they give you a tour, you see the engine room, they bring you into the dorms, you see what it's like. So you really feel welcomed. And I think that's unique to Maine, at least in the Northeast, that kind of welcoming nature and wanting to show you everything. And Castine is a really, really gorgeous place too.
Yeah, and to add on to that a little bit, Castine is a small town at the end of the road in Maine. It's a pretty not isolated necessarily, but it's away from other things. So we do get to have a very special experience in that there aren't a lot of distractions necessarily to take you away from campus quickly. You have to really work at it to get other places. So I think you're more likely to take advantage of what's here. And we have 60 different vessels that you can go play with. And every afternoon, if you'd like, you can go down and drive a boat. It's it's part of the program, and it's not a class, but it's an opportunity. If you want to really practice your boat handling skills, you can go down to the waterfront every afternoon at 4 o'clock and drive a boat around. So the ship is open to, it doesn't matter what your major is, you can come on board and learn about it. You can talk to people who work on the ship, and it's available. Like I said, there are 60 odd vessels, and there are lots of clubs and other things that are opportunities to stay with your group of peers and talk about common interests and everything else. The other maritime academies, I work with people from all of the other maritime academies except for Great Lakes. I've never worked with anybody from Great Lakes Maritime, but they're all good people, and they all have similar experiences. But I think what does set Maine Maritime apart is that hands-on experience, and it's every day, and it's available, and you can make the most of it, or you can stay just as a book learner if you'd like, if you're not in one of the programs that hands-on is part of it. But you have opportunities, and it doesn't matter what your major is, and it doesn't matter who your peer group is. You can put your hands on stuff if you want to, and it's available pretty much all the time.
Yeah, so that's what sets Maine Maritime apart. But to more directly answer the question, what's it like to work with others from the other maritime academies? It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy meeting students and and graduates from the other academies, because they went to school in a different place, but in the end, it's a very similar curriculum. They all need sea time, so they all sailed a little bit. They got the same license, so you can talk about this, that, and the other thing, the similarities in your program. So it's a lot of fun. I love meeting graduates from other schools.
It is a lot of fun, and there's a good rivalry between all the schools. We kid each other and pick on each other's programs, but at the end of the day, we all are shipmates and enjoy each other's company. So
one big harbor, the entire world around. Can't go to any airport without recognizing somebody, no matter where you are in the world. Julia, Grady, did you want to add into this? I know you guys have had some experience out there, so please jump in.
So I have a friend that is actually at Mass Maritime Academy, and over the last 3 years that we've both been at the respective academies, we've kind of compared and just kind of seen what's different between each other's programs. He's also in the equivalent program for engineering down at Massachusetts, and it's similar, but there's a lot of little stuff that I see that we have that just isn't offered down there. But generally, it's all the same in terms of what you get for the license. But a lot of the smaller stuff, like we have a tug and barge, and we're the only school in the nation that teaches that kind of thing. There's just little things that I'm noticing that are differences that you just can't get anywhere else.
Just can't get anywhere.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to that. I actually, as a student, we kind of interact with the other schools sometime. I went to a conference and I met like all these girls from every maritime academy, like Kings Point, California, all these, and we all talk and we're like, so how's your program? What's your program? And I think what I discovered from that conference and also going out into the industry, I had so much diversity in maritime academies on my ship. We had like Great Lakes. The only person I didn't have was Texas, but everybody else we had. And so it was really interesting. And as soon as they found out I was from Maine, they were like, Maine makes good engineers. And it's like, why? And I think I kind of started to understand what they meant by that. Because I mean, yes, we are sort of more rugged and we do like our trucks, but I definitely think the structure of the way that we learn things is definitely specific to Maine Maritime. I mean, every school has their own way of learning, but I feel like the way that we are taught is, for instance, we do our freshman cruise and then the next year we go directly into the industry and then we come back for a junior cruise and it's sort of culminating into like a management position. Whereas we had a mass maritime cadet on my ship. He was sent out his junior year. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a like delay, I guess, in that, but it's all about the teaching differences. And the other thing I will say that really is a stark difference is sort of what we prioritize. For instance, the mass maritime cadet on my ship pulled out his project for cadet shipping, and he had probably 5 drawings that he had to submit, and drawings are of systems, by the way. So it's like the lube oil system, jacket water system, things, all the internal systems for the ship. He had about 5 that he had to do on CAD. So that was his project. And then he looked at mine and he's like, oh my gosh, why do you have so many drawings? I had about 30 drawings. And he's like, that is insane. And I'm like, yeah, well, I do think I'm a lot more comfortable understanding the way that the systems work, how to trace the systems. And that's a great skill to go out into the industry with, because you're responsible for your ship. And if you don't know the systems and how to fix something, it's like devastating. So I definitely think Maine Maritime is very on top of it. The other thing is we have a bunch of different concentrations of engineering, and some schools really just have like mechanical engineering, and then we have like 4 different flavors. So there's a little bit of difference, but.
No, I appreciate all of your perspectives. And we always tell students that there's 7 of these different opportunities to gain this really powerful, incredible license. It's finding the school that fits your learning style the best. And we all have particular ways of teaching, different size classrooms, more hands-on versus less hands-on, more opportunity to drive boats and be on the water than others. And so other schools will have different opportunities, and it's really finding the school that fits your learning style and your personality the best. Will make you the most successful in that career path. And I'm going to turn it back to Elizabeth to to keep moving forward here.
Yeah, thank you for all of those. That was a great question. One thing I just wanted to highlight that I noticed that both Justin and Captain Max said, and then I'm going to turn a question over to Grady and Julia. You each mentioned soft skills. Which is kind of hard to wrap your mind around when you're thinking about a STEM school, science, tech, engineering, math. We are definitely going to teach you how to understand engines, how to drive a boat. But at the end of the day, this is my challenge to you, find me a business that's not having something to do with managing people. You can't escape it. So I think it's really powerful that both Justin and Captain Macarthur mentioned that, you know, especially on the deck side, if you're going to be that sort of executive level management, to be able to manage your crew and keep everybody safe, but also sane, right? Same thing on the engine side, to make sure that you act with a cool, calm head if there's a fire that is a huge threat aboard a vessel. I don't say that to scare you, but the first semester, students learn firefighting, right? And ocean survival and all these things that you wouldn't even think about if you went to, I'm going to call it a land-based school, just as a comparison. So what I would like to ask is, with Grady and Julia, since you're currently students in the regiment, since you're students here, what have you done so far? What have you noticed maybe in your classes or as part of the regiment that has set you up to be that leader, to be that people manager? Does that question make sense?
So I am a striker. Striker is kind of what you would equate to like a drill instructor at any other sort of regimented academy. So what that is we're part of a student leadership group that has to train incoming freshmen. So already we're put into leadership roles where we have to improvise and we have to teach people that are below us, show them the ropes and help them form themselves to be ready to go out at sea and work in an industry where you need to work with one another and have a structure. In addition to that, the regiment here is entirely run by students. I myself have put in for cadet third assistant engineer, which is a position that I will follow around the training ship's third engineer and learn from him and learn what his duties are, and sort of like prepare myself to fulfill that role when I graduate. There's a lot of different opportunities on campus, anything from regimental leadership positions to student government and things like that.
Thank you. How about you, Julia? Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just definitely think that the whole curriculum of every class that you take here is so safety oriented. It's very industry focused. Everything that you learn is safety first. Learn a lot about the dangers and the hazards of the shipping industry, but it's also clarified that these are totally preventable hazards and it can be completely safe. Like it can be so safe if you just follow the regulations, you're a good leader. You're accountable for your crew, things like that. So I definitely have learned so much about maintenance, inspections for gear, things like that. In every single class, job safety analysis sheets. Every time you do a job, you go over the hazards. So it's very, very focused. Always have your proper PPE. Every single thing that we do at Maine Maritime is about safety. And I also think that we have so many extracurriculars here that are industry related. I am vice president of the Society of Women Engineers, and there's also a SNAME group that studies naval design. Usually, we also have the Castine Fire Department, and that's a great way to test your skills with firefighting because like they said, you are 911 on that ship and we are trained pretty well. So no worries, but it is a lot of fun. Yeah, we have the boat and schooner crew, we have recreational sailing. So there's so many activities where you can get involved and be a leader and something that is maritime related. So.
And with these practical skills, I took the sailing class as one of the things I did for a PE credit. They don't baby you. The very first class, they put you in a boat and they drop everyone off in their little 15-foot Mercury and they say, pull on this to bring up the mainsail, pull this one for the jib, be back in 3 hours. And they'll give you some guidance, but yeah, they let you go. They're not afraid to let you make mistakes because that's the best way to learn, but it is done safely. There are a million opportunities for leadership, for learning. I worked as a teaching assistant in the machine shop. That was a lot of fun. And the professors are always willing to take extra time, answer questions. And there's such a wealth of knowledge with them too. One of the machine shop teachers, I'm not sure if he's there anymore, but in his free time, he would design and build speakers from scratch. So he'd do the math to design the waveguides and at the front of the speaker, he'd design all the circuitry and then he'd draw them up in some kind of 3D modeling software and send them up in the CNC mill the machine shop has, and you'd cut them out. So he'd build all this stuff from scratch. It was just really cool. And if you hang around and just watch him, observe, he's more than willing to teach. And every professor was like that. So if you want to, you can learn a lot more than just what's in the class.
That is huge. We talk about that a lot, is that you're investing this time and energy into this education. You're coming away with so much more. I noticed somebody had put in a question kind of about license maintenance. And that was actually, before you'd even asked that question, that was kind of the next thread I wanted to make sure we got to before the end of the program. You're coming in to getting this license. You're going to graduate. Hopefully you've got that booklet in hand. And what are the, well, first of all, what were the steps in order to gain that license? Yes, you're coming here for this education. Yes, you're going to be a part of this regimental program, which we're going to go into a little bit more depth in a couple of webinars from now. But what are the other steps in order to proving that you know what you're doing and you're ready to go? And then once you have the license, how long does it last? How do you need to renew it? How do you maintain a license? Things like that. So I might actually pose this first off to Captain Macarthur, as you've held this license the longest, and then we'll kind of move it around. But
sure, pick on the old guy.
yeah, no.
Just
No,
kidding.
the most experienced.
Okay. No, your license, to get it initially during your senior year, usually in January, although the last couple of years with COVID have been a little bit different, but usually in January, you'll come back early from winter break and you'll sit for licensing exams. They conduct those exams here on campus. And you will sit for a battery of tests, and it's all multiple choice. You'll have a certain number of references that are available in the test room that you can use for reference, but certainly not every question is able to be answered by what's on the desk in the exam room. And once you pass that battery of tests, they've determined that you can hold that license. In addition to the test, throughout your career at Maine Maritime, you have practical assessments that you have to get signed off. And usually those are built into either a class or a cruise or maintenance activities or some other thing on campus. And you really don't even know that they're happening. You're being assessed by whoever is in charge of that activity without you really even knowing it. But it's part of the curriculum. And if you pass the course or whatever activity that those assessments are assigned to, then you pass those assessments. All of that is turned into the U.S. Coast Guard before you graduate, once you pass your exams. And then they, because Maine Maritime has an accredited program by the U.S. Coast Guard, they will grant you your license based on Maine Maritime's assurance that you have passed all of the requirements. That license is then good for 5 years. Or during that 5-year period before your license is due to expire, you have to accumulate sea time to keep it current. So if you don't sail on your license, you can put your license into what is called continuance or continuity. And basically you tell the Coast Guard that I still want my license, but I'm not actively sailing on it. I don't want to let it lapse because then I'd have to go through the whole program again to get it back. I plan on maybe sailing sometime in the future. Let's just put it on a shelf for a little while. And then you will have to take a few tests to get that license back after you've put it in that status, if you do decide to use it again. So basically a license is good for 5 years. To upgrade your license, you need time. To go from third mate or third engineer to second mate or second engineer, you have to accumulate some sea time. And it's got to be sea time that is equivalent for the license that you have. So if you're working on a tugboat and you want to go from third mate to second mate, but it doesn't qualify for tonnage, then you're not going to be able to upgrade that unlimited tonnage license. So you have to sail on a ship that's equivalent to the license that you hold in order to upgrade it. But that being said, you can upgrade or add endorsements for that limited tonnage. So if you want a 1,600 ton captain's license and you've been sailing on a 1,600 ton vessel, you can do that. You just have to sit for an exam. If you do upgrade from third to second, either on the engineering or the deck side, then to upgrade to the next license, you have to take some courses, get some more qualifications signed off, and sit for another battery of tests. So that battery of tests that you sit for either first engineer or for chief mate, is a management level type of an exam. It used to be that you had to sit for a test every level, but they've since broken it up. So it's your entry level, and then accumulate seat time, and then your management level, and accumulate seat time to go to the top step. So a lot of it depends on what size vessels you're sailing on, but basically the license is good for 5 years unless you renew or upgrade.
Yeah, no, that is very helpful. So 5 years, does it ever expire? In terms of, do you age out of it?
No, you never age out of it. We had 2 gentlemen on the last training cruise who were both in their early 80s, sailing as watch officers. So it doesn't ever, you don't really age out of it. As long as you can continue to pass the medical exam, and you do have to do that every 2 years if you're sailing on a ship that's governed by certain rules, or every 5 years if you're, so there's a little bit of funkiness with medical exams, but basically every 2 years you have to pass a physical, and the Coast Guard stipulates what's checked on that physical. And as long as you can continue to pass that, and you want to hold your license and you want to keep it current, you can keep sailing as long as you're able.
Don't worry if you didn't catch all of that, or you're totally confused. When you come here, we make sure that you've got all of your ducks in a row before we get you down into those licensing exams. So feel free, if you had further questions about the licensing process and what is involved with that, you can reach out to Elizabeth or I at any time. You can reply to that email that had the invite for this Zoom, and we can either get you connected with somebody here on campus or be able to answer those questions individually. So if you had any further questions about the renewal process and the longevity of licensing, ask away, because it can be very confusing, and we're here to help. But you don't need to know it all right now. You don't need to know it all right now. Justin or Julia or Grady, did you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the phrase battery of tests. It sounds scary, but it's really not bad. And the 4 years at Maine, or 3.5 years that lead up to the exams, they really prepare you well. I didn't have to think very hard for a lot of the questions. They give you a lot of the right tools to be able to take the test. A lot of your teachers right from freshman year will format their tests very similarly, kind of word their questions similarly. And the Coast Guard's not out to trick you. And you'll know most of the stuff really well and be able to cruise right through these tests. So they're not hard as long as you put in your effort and do your homework.
I feel like that's kind of amazing life advice. Do your homework, show up. On that kind of vein, we're nearing the end of our time, but I always like to end our panels just throwing it out to our panelists. You know, is there one thing that either you'd like to communicate to our audience? You know, I now know, and I wish I had known back when I was making my application, or just, you know, a nugget that you think would be nice, and or advice beyond, you know, show up, do your homework, which you should be doing right now as well, as you round out whatever it is you're in high school, or if you're finishing out some different academic courses at a college. But and I'll kind of leave it open-ended.
Well, I guess the old guy will go first. I applied for college, 30 something years ago. So, but my advice is make the most of it. Do everything you possibly can. Get as many qualifications, certifications, the biggest license. You're here for 4 years anyway. So absolutely get the best possible outcome. Use your time here to get as many different things to put on your resume as you possibly can. Because when your resume hits somebody's desk for your first job and you've got 100 things listed and somebody else has 2, you're going to get the job. So go for it. Make the most of your time.
Speaking of resumes, tomorrow here on campus, we're hosting a career fair for all of our students. And our offices, if you haven't been to Maine Maritime yet, are in the same building as our career services department. And we're watching these students come in with the most incredible resumes, and they haven't even graduated yet. I mean, they are just like, I mean, these resumes are worth gold and they haven't even graduated yet. And they're here to go. There's a ton of companies here because they want a Maine Maritime Academy graduate. So it's that resume building that you can do while you're here. So thank you for that. Who wants to jump in next?
I second that advice to take advantage of every possible opportunity. While I was there, my schedule was just packed. My academic schedule as well as my free time, just because there are so many opportunities. There's so many great pieces of equipment that are people don't normally have access to. Like they have really the $18,000 TIG welders, for example. So just really nice equipment, and you might as well take advantage of that while you're paying tuition. You got a lot of knowledge at your fingertips, a lot of great equipment. Just an example in our graphics class, I'm looking at it right now. I went from having no experience with 3D modeling software to modeling a Tonka truck, and then I 3D printed it in their one of their design labs. So there's just a million opportunities. Ask questions, talk to your professors, upperclassmen, and do as much as you can.
That's amazing. I'm just picturing that you have a shelf full of little Tonka trucks.
Yeah.
How about Grady or Julia, since you're current students and you're a little bit, no offense, you guys, closer to when you applied to college, is there anything you'd like to communicate to our audience?
Grady, what's one piece of advice during that application process that you want to throw out there?
I think you blocked it out.
Well, if you're in high school now, don't be afraid to do that little extra class like that. Oh, maybe I shouldn't take that calc class. Well, you should take that calculus, take the AP English, something like that. It'll help you miles when you get to college, regardless of where you go. Just, don't be afraid to do that little extra thing, because it'll help you in the long run.
You headed to the career fair tomorrow, Grady?
What was that?
Are you headed to the career fair tomorrow with your resume?
Yes, I am. I touched up my resume actually a few hours ago. So
perfect. Julia, oh my God. Go for it, Julia.
If I were to give advice, I think I would say come here with an open mind. This is the best place to be whoever you want to be. It's like a fresh start, fresh, clean slate. You can be like really focused individual who wants that license, gonna get out of school, and you can make a lot of friends here, a lot of leadership experiences. This is a great academy to grow yourself as a person. The other thing, try and be as best as you can be with time management. I think that's a really important skill that every professional needs to learn, no matter what industry you're in, but it's especially probably pertinent in the maritime industry. So just come with an open mind, come and look to learn, I guess. And also, yes, I'm going to the career fair. I'm very excited. I've printed out like 15 resumes, so let's see who takes them.
Yes, you guys are going to have a world ahead of you. It's pretty exciting to think about, and they're only juniors, which there's only going to be more opportunities in the next few years. So it's amazing. I wanted to mention before we said goodnight, unless Elizabeth, we can pass back to you, but this Saturday, we are having an opportunity, if you haven't seen it yet, to come see campus, meet Grady, meet Julia, tour the ship, tour the 500-foot vessel, stand in the bridge, stand in the engine room, come see the dorms. We're not just going to show you the dorms from afar. We're going to have you stand in there. We're going to have you stand in our bridge simulator, see our wet lab if you're interested in oceanography or any of the ocean science programs. So I'm going to put a link in the chat, which has the registration. It's Saturday the 23rd. Just click on the day and find the time that's available. And if we don't see you on Saturday, it's the link to all of our other open tour slots. So you can come meet these guys, hear their stories in real time. So we got to get them back to their homework. We got lots to do, touching up their resumes, getting ready for career fair.
Just one last quick thing. Don't let wearing a uniform for 4 years or cutting your hair for 4 years make your decision for you. It's a means to an end, and if you're here for 4 years anyway, and you want to do a license or you want to be an engineer, get the biggest one you can. So cut your hair and put a uniform on and you'll get it. It just don't be afraid of it. Don't let that be part of your decision for your life, is whether or not you need to wear a uniform for 4 years. It's a minor inconvenience.
I found it to be quite, it makes life easy.
It does. You know what you're going to wear to work in the morning or wear to school in the morning.
Yep.
Well, and look how professional you two look. In particular, Grady and Julia did not put on their best for this webinar. This is how they looked all day.
Yeah. 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night. I realized there was one other very important question that we wanted to ask, and we just got so sidetracked with all these great other questions and answers. But if you gain a Coast Guard license, are you obligated to the Coast Guard? Do you have to serve time in the Coast Guard? That's a big misconception that families ask. So I wanted to just make sure that people are straight with the answer. So if anybody wanted to add into that, make sure that
the Coast Guard issues the license and that's it. They're just the issuing authority.
Yeah.
You don't have any obligation to, unless you make one, either through the Navy or through the Coast Guard. There is a program through the Navy that they basically want merchant mariners to be reservists in the Navy. So there is a special program for people who do hold a license, but if you have to make that obligation yourself, there is no inherent obligation in holding the license other than the Coast Guard issues it. So you're not in the Coast Guard, you're not in the Navy, you're not bound to any sort of service other than maintaining your license. They just issue it.
Yep, just like getting your driver's license. You don't have to serve time to the Department of Motor Vehicles after you get this driver's license. So and that with the uniforms is a misconception. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard that from those that are living it. So Elizabeth, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we said goodnight? I appreciate everybody's time watching and being a panelist tonight.
No, I think that about does it. Thank you all, both panelists and the audience members, for spending an hour with us tonight. That's sort of one of the amazing offshoots, believe it or not, of this horrible pandemic, is that we can have events like this and you don't have to drive anywhere, things like that. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end our webinar, but thank you all so much, and we wish you all the best. Stay in touch if you need anything. You can see both Kate and my email addresses as our names, but typically we're the ones sending all the emails, so you probably can get in touch. So have a good one, everyone.
Good night.